He spent 2 years on his own dime and his own time, basically ignoring his marketing agency, which was a big deal. I mean, he had an office, he had like 20 employees, like it was like a real operation. And he kind of went out on the road with me and for free, paid for his own flights, his own hotel rooms, and he had no ownership in the company, no promises, no pay for 2 years just because he believed
No
it.
problem. And HighLevel, so much versatility and the ability for us to use the automations unrestricted.
Hey, Shaun, thanks for joining us today.
Heck yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
Well, before you hopped on, Mark asked, well, what are we going to go over today? And I said, one thing I'd love to share with everybody that I'm not sure everybody has heard is a little bit of your backstory. I just love your backstory on like how you got into HighLevel and prior to that, like what you were doing and how HighLevel evolved. Like to me, that backstory is really, really neat.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll try to make it sound exciting. So yeah, so I had a SaaS company that I founded prior to this in the accounts receivable space, which was like basically reminding people to pay invoices. And I feel like my entire career has been about like the big impacts of small things, but this was a great example where I met a lot of business owners who were basically their business were failing in many cases. They were going bankrupt because their invoices weren't being paid. And what we found was that if you just remind people incessantly, they will pay. And that's what we did. We just automated that process. Well, actually, I say we, but it was just me. I automated that process, and I was an add-on to QuickBooks and Zero, and I got about 1,000 customers off my. I always like to say off my kitchen table because I remember that's kind of where I started. And great experience, but I ran into a bunch of. I also learned a bunch of things. So one, I learned that as exciting as it is to collect money owed, it's more exciting for businesses to get more new money coming in the door. And then also I found that I was a really cool add-on, but I couldn't figure out what to do kind of after a certain point. And so I ended up just randomly getting a cold call from somebody who claimed they could sell my business. And I didn't believe it. So they said, well, that's fine. Just name a price. And worst case scenario, I don't sell it. So I named a price and they came back to me the next week with, I think, 3 offers at that price. And so I ended up selling to a Canadian payments company, which is consequently where I met Ian, who now runs our support team. So that was a great adventure. But I also learned that I wanted to be something more than an add-on. So that's kind of how HighLevel happened, because we talked to a lot of these business owners. They really wanted more customers, and we thought we could kind of do something there. So in this case, I grabbed Varun, and he and I went on this adventure together. And initially it was super successful because we had all these small businesses. We came up with version 1, which was like reputation management and two-way text messaging, and people were buying it. But then unfortunately, we would call and they would cancel after 2 weeks. And we would get on the phone and be like, "Hey, what's going on? Why you saw the demo? Like, did the software not work? Whatever." And they would say, "Oh, no, it works perfectly, and we love it and all this stuff, but we just don't have time to implement it in our business." Which to two software engineers is like game over. Like, you can't, like, how do you fix that problem? And so we kind of had to get this really big fork in the road. And we had a couple of failures before that. We had done like a mobile invoicing app that had failed. We did like a full on, like we spent like 6 months building like an HVAC plumber kind of field services application that failed. And so we just figured this was like going to fail again. But what was really cool and lucky for us is we got a phone call from a marketing agency. They had a co-customer of ours in common. And so when we got on the phone with them and showed them what we were doing, what was awesome was not only did this person understand it, they were excited by it, and they want to buy it for all 80 of their other clients. And that was kind of cool. Although I didn't think we could build a business out of that. And then, but really what that person fundamentally turned us on to is the fact that if you really want to help the small business owners, you need to help the people helping the small business owners. And, we first started calling them marketing agencies because that's where we started. And, but it's evolved obviously quite a bit since then. But I would say it was a lot of failing forward and a lot of lucky breaks. And that marketing agency, of course, that guy, that was Rob and Alex, who's now our third co-founder. But it didn't just stop there. It wasn't like, oh, in a light bulb moment. I mean, he spent 2 years on his own dime and his own time, basically ignoring his marketing agency, which was a big deal. I mean, he had an office, he had like 20 employees, like it was like a real operation. And he kind of went out on the road with me and for free, paid for his own flights, his own hotel rooms, and had no ownership in the company, no promises, no pay for 2 years just because he believed in it.
Oh.
And then, well, it's people often ask me questions like, well, how do you find a great co-founder? Well, I mean, do that. Find someone who's willing to do that. And you'll find great co-founders. Again, a great example of how you luck into amazing people, but that's kind of the high level story in a nutshell.
That's really neat. So that's the first time I've heard you talk about like all these in-betweens.
Oh yeah.
Were all of those with Varun? Is that who you're referring to when you said we?
I mean, it depends how far back you want to go, but yeah. So the invoicing, so Invoice Ripper was not with Varun. I mean, I would have done much better with him, but it's clearly a mistake. But to be fair, he was like when I first called him. So we start with well, at the time it was Android only because we hadn't discovered Flutter yet, which is a whole other discussion. But basically we had to pick like a platform. And we thought, well, maybe field service people use Android more. We don't know. But we started there, and that was like, oh, well, we'll give it away for free because we saw other apps charging. We'd make money on the payments. That was kind of our shtick there. So that was with Varun, and then I was like, well, let's go after home services directly, because one of the things I learned working with all these small businesses as an add-on was I wanted to be a standalone app. I thought that was the most important thing. Like with QuickBooks or without QuickBooks, they'd still buy my product. And initially, maybe like marketing agencies, I want to focus on a niche. But unfortunately, after 6 months, and this is a great learning experience, we sort of went into the lab and worked furiously, and and then we brought it out, and they said, oh yeah, well, we've seen this before. It's like the same thing we already have, but with like half the features. And so there, really wasn't a great way to differentiate it, and it didn't really speak to a need. It was a bunch of features. So there was a lot of failure in there and a lot of lessons learned, but it was a very good experience for sure.
Very cool. One other thing I've heard you touch on before is one thing that you learned in your payments tool was not to, and you always phrase this better than I do, but not to underprice your support. And I think that's so important for people to learn.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the reason why, you can tell it one of two ways, right? You can say, well, I was a single founder, sole operator, and I'm just such a badass because I was doing it all myself. But that was a total lie. It was I had no. I had no money. I think I got to 40 or 50 grand a month at one point, which at the time felt really great. But I still wasn't enough money to hire anybody really. And so it was really just that I had undercharged so prolifically that I couldn't afford to hire anyone. It was like a work, and I actually got sort of like, it's like I coded my own prison is how I always felt like. I ended up just doing customer support because that's all I could do to keep my head above water. I couldn't write any more code. I would just, I'd fix a bug here or there or whatever, but just in general, I wasn't doing anything. And I certainly had no time to be strategic. And then of course I ended up with customers in Australia. And so then now all of a sudden I'm working 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. And, my wife is wondering what the heck I'm doing. And, did you marry the right guy? And, all of a sudden, and more importantly, I would say I had I don't know what he was at the time, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. And so I'm watching my son grow up. And so it's like, all right, clearly doing something wrong here. So I very much felt like I had made my own prison, and I felt like I couldn't escape because I was like, well, on one hand, it's bringing in all my money. And on the other hand, I can't escape it. What do I do? And so I was so very thankful that I got a random cold call from a business broker at that point, because I really honestly was at my wit's end. So it worked out perfectly.
Very cool. Does anybody have any, before we get into questions, I love hearing your story about your HVAC company that you still are serving now.
Oh yeah. I mean, this just harkens back to the fact that, I used to use well, maybe I still do, but the analogy of like, I feel like I'm like a carnival barker outside of a circus tent. And in order to get people in, like customers in, it's like, hey, it's like, I'm like standing outside. I'm like, oh, I've got a fire breathing dragon in here. You got to come check it out. You've never seen this before. And then people will be like, yeah, but do you have tigers? I'm like, no, you idiot. I don't have tigers. I got a dragon. It's just so much cooler. I'm like, no tigers. I'm not coming in. And so, we ended up doing is just building half these features in HighLevel are just built to get suckers in the tent. So then they're like, oh my God, there's a dragon in here. This is amazing. And I'm like, I told you, right? But, they just don't believe you. And so fundamentally, I think this is a great, the reason I use that example is because the HVAC company is the same way. Like, he came to my house. Oh gosh, I don't know. It's been a long time now, probably 10 years. And, he did my HVAC. He was one man in a van. He did a great job. He had 12 Google reviews. I said, why do you have so many Google reviews? And he's like, well, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, well, what if I could get you more Google reviews? And he said, how much? I said, $300 a month. He said, sold. and the rest is sort of history. And he's been with me since then. Now, of course, the difference is he's got 30 trucks. He doesn't do any of them. He doesn't go out on any jobs anymore. And he went when I first met him, it was QuickBooks. And every time he would complete a job, I would just send a little message into HighLevel, and we'd send a text out. No crazy, no fluff, no gating, no nothing. Just, hey, this is Derek from Alpine Access. I'd love to know how we did. Click here to leave a review. Drops right on the Google page. Pops up the stars window. That's it. Moved the guy from 12 reviews. He's over 1,000 now. And then he moved on and he got Service Titan, the super fancy HVAC system, and actually hired a guy. And all of a sudden, that guy called me one day, and he the reviews had stopped going out because, of course, they didn't tell me, and I hadn't switched it from QuickBooks to Service Titan. But in the meantime, Service Titan, of course, had implemented their thing. And I got on the phone with him, and he's like, "Well, why do we need you guys?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe you don't anymore. How are those reviews going with Service Titan?" He's like, "Oh, they're terrible." And I'm like, "Well, let's take a look." And it turns out what it was is Service Titan sort of does gating without being gating. They'll send you a text like, "Hey, I saw that Bob came out. Did Bob do a good job?" And then if you write back like, "Yeah, Bob's amazing," then they'll be like, "Great, can you leave a review?" But see, nobody wants to do that crap. It's too much work. So I just switched them back, and boom, the reviews shot up again, and they were happy. So they're still with me despite the fact that they have. And this is actually a great example, in my opinion, of I'm not that smart, I'm not that innovative, I'm not doing anything crazy here. I'm doing something very simple. And even in the midst of them having an incredible feature set in this other platform, it's about solving the problem. It's about like giving them the solution and being able to do that consistently. And it's worth a lot. And they paid us $300 a month since I can remember. And I never hear from them. I don't talk to them. I mean, the only time I think they recently reached out to me because the automated review reply started turning on using AI, and they said, "Hey, we want to do this manually. Turn that off." And I said, "You're crazy," but I did it anyways. And so I just don't hear from them, and they still pay us $300 a month. So there you go, simple.
Yeah, I love that story. And sometimes
I made a help doc. I made a help video on this just because I've told that story so many times. It's in the help section now, just for anybody who doesn't believe that you can provide a very one-stop shop service. And I can think of companies who have built $100 million plus enterprises off the back of that one feature and that one pitch.
Yeah, I started my agency off just doing reviews.
Yeah.
So I love that. But yeah, so Mark wanted to share a little something, and then I know we had a couple questions.
Sure.
So Mark, you want to go ahead?
Fire away.
Hey, Shaun, it's nice to meet you. I'm sure you speak to a million people every day, but I messaged you a long while back about something Project Broadcast is doing. But anyway, I wanted to thank you and really give you, really be able to explain to you what HighLevel's been able to do for me. I've been learning a skill set I had no idea about until I had a client ask me to do something. I was like, wait a second, what? So I started in 2020.
Yeah.
Like everyone else, I'm like selling features. And I quickly realized, okay, that doesn't work. But you said something that stood out just a second ago, solve the problem. And HighLevel is such versatility in the ability for us to use the automations unrestricted, along with the unlimited funnels and to be able to do things, has really allowed me to solve all sorts of unorthodox problems. So I know people look at it as a CRM or it's a marketing platform. I'm like, it's way, way more than that. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that. And if you do understand that and you tap into it, man, you have an engine. And so what I realized was that I have pretty much become a CRM specialist. I am admin certified, thankfully for that.
Very cool.
I'm really excited about that. But pretty much I realized there are people at Salesforce or HubSpot who are getting paid like, $7,500, $150 an hour to develop things that I can build on HighLevel. And I'm just like, so that's what I've been learning this whole time? I was like, so pretty much I'm a CRM automation specialist or expert, whatever it is, and I can charge people that much money for what I do. Turns out you can. I had my best month ever with I'm not rich or anything, I'll tell you what. But I was finally able to charge my first client, feeling comfortable enough with my expertise. I'm like, yeah, well, this is going to cost you $75 an hour, probably a little on the lower end for what I think might be I might be able to do for people. But he was like, sure, no problem. And $6,700 just like that for putting in all.
100%. Yeah. I've seen this before. People have a hard time. But once you get there, what you realize is you're at least half of what you should be charging at this point.
Yeah, and it's pretty insane. The way I realized that was I had a client who was working with HubSpot, and they were like, "Hey, are you able to do something about this. I went to HubSpot. I'd never been on the HubSpot platform before. I'd been using HighLevel to build all sorts of things. I went there and I was like, I can't build the most basic thing on HubSpot, but I can do this on HighLevel. And that's how I convinced them to come over to use HighLevel. I was like, look, I don't know what's going on with this HubSpot thing. I've heard it's really great and dandy and all that, but they're charging you an arm and a leg to do like the most simplest things I can do on HighLevel right now. It's a click of a button. And that's when I realized what I'm learning here is way beyond what I thought. And I've been able to apply it ever since. So thank you so much.
No worries, man. Don't worry, we have more to come. Yeah, HubSpot, I think, is an interesting one. I think, well, as they move up market, they're leaving a lot of their small business customers behind. And, they have a lot of pressures from Wall Street to find a way to charge more money. And so I think it's a great opportunity as we come out. I mean, the only thing I substantively believe that we're missing, besides maybe some minor reporting, is custom objects. And it's out at the end of this quarter, which is the end of this month. So I'm not, in fact, technically speaking, it's actually already out, but in private beta. And so it's been being tested. And really what's really going to kick it off is it being able to be in workflows. So that can be very useful. And that is really what we'll launch at the end of this month. But when it does, I think that's really the only thing. And even there, I would make the argument that most people don't use it, although they probably should. And I think the biggest use case is just helping to adapt the platform to individual client needs, because clients, we may like contacts and companies, but they might like pets and pet parents. We want to be able to,
right.
create those native objects. But outside of that, I think we'll go gangbusters on HubSpot into the back half of the year, and then in 2025. And I think we'll be able to, together as a partnership, really take a lot of their customers.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
All right. Looks like awesome. Mario's up next with another question.
Same thing as Mark, actually, kind of more of a testimonial for Shaun and the GHL team. So I discovered GHL by happenstance. A customer brought me this crazy platform for insurance agents that had like no support whatsoever. It was incredibly complex back in the workflows or the campaign and triggers days. So well before workflows, really when GHL was starting out. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, this looks dumb. It's just another CRM. This is really, nothing special. And then one night I was bored and I was like, all right, I'm going to get in and take a look at this thing. So I popped the hood and I started building a couple things here and there, and immediately went and signed up for an agency level account. And I walked in the next day to my office and I said, guys, like, I have this idea. And it took off from there. So at the time we were charging like $149 for unlimited WordPress support. And I did the same thing as Shaun, as you said you did. I built myself this digital prison where, everything was so dependent on me or a human doing something. And almost overnight, the pandemic had a lot to do with it, but almost overnight, I went from a very not profitable business to an incredibly profitable business purely on GHL. Because when the pandemic happened, there was just an abundance of people that were in my Rolodex that never believed that they needed digital services or funnels or automations or it's called tech spec or anything like that. And I said, hey, look, guys, I have this new thing. And at the time I was selling it as something that I built, which was kind of funny because that was my first experience in white labeling something. That's was great. Like, oh, I've been working on this for so long, blah, 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 blah. And it started off as me charging, basically the agreement was if you stick with us for the duration of the pandemic, this software will be free. And then when you get to the point where you are making money on it, you pay me what you can afford, right?
Yeah.
And by the time I sold my business, I was charging $15,000 to $25,000 for a setup in HighLevel. Now awesome. they were a little bit more tailored, but realistically what it was HighLevel snapshots for the various industries. I just say, okay, you're an HVAC company, click the HVAC button, and then they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing in the world. So, I mean, for anybody that, watches this later on that's on the fence and is really not sure, Mark, to your point, dude, $75 an hour, that's way too cheap, man. You need to double, triple, quadruple that, and people will pay it all day long. like know your worth, know your value. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Price is what you pay, value is what you get, right? So
exactly.
you're delivering a tremendous amount of value, you can charge a tremendously high price.
Yeah. So super awesome, Shaun. Thank you again.
Yeah,
Thanks for
congratulations.
always
That's
picking
very
up my
cool.
calls when something's on fire. I really appreciate you. You're a one in
Anytime,
a
man.
million
Happy
business
to
owner.
help.
So
Yeah,
Very
and if
cool.
I could just brag on high level, like top level founder support, like I've never seen anything like it in the world. And it's amazing. I mean, I am blown away like every
We
day.
like, I mean, this is just kind of how we come. So, I mean, I'd like to say that we have a master plan or something like that, but this is just kind of how we all are as people. And I think it just naturally fits the groove. And, I think we also really enjoy building. We feel like we're very much in partnership with our customers and we feel like we're in service of you. And, we feel like it's fun to build, in public with you. I mean, it can have its bumps at times, but I still think it's the better way to roll. And, we feel super lucky because we get an opportunity to see through kind of all of your eyes, like not only what features we need, but how to build them. And I think that how to build them piece is often the real kicker because we're not really thinking about, the plumber or the lawyer, trying to sort of meet all these different needs. We're really trying to focus in on people who are delivering those end solutions. And I think we get a radically better outcome from the get-go than if we were just asking random business owners what they think a forms product should be or CRM should
Yeah.
be or whatever, because it's not their expertise. And I think that's okay. I mean, like if I don't spend a lot of time asking, my lawyer about dental things or my dentist about lawyer things. I just, everybody has their expertise and that's great. You should respect that. If anything, I think what I'm hoping is happening is we're building the muscle the other way. There was probably a time when everybody thought doing their own accounting and bookkeeping was like no big deal. And I'm sure there's people still foolish enough to do it. But at some point, it was sort of realized like, yeah, you know what, maybe I should probably let hire a professional accountant to file the taxes there. I think very much this is something where I need to hire a professional who can help me build up my CRM and do my marketing and do these sorts of things while I become and stay an expert at what it is that I do. And I hope we're really building that muscle and building up the profession more than anything else.
Yeah, I love seeing that. Last question. Is Shaun really human or is he secretly a high-level AI project?
Probably. I think that's probably true. I mean, although I am very excited about the AI employee that we're bringing out here at the end of hopefully at the end of this quarter, but very soon either way, because I do think this is going to be a big deal for businesses going forward. I really think this idea of I don't know how to all roll out, but the way I'd love to see it is, every business has an AI employee and it can do multiple things, but it's yet again an opportunity for all of you to go in and help these folks adopt AI. And I think if we can encapsulate it in a way that they can understand it, and also they don't feel like they're paying for 6 or 7 different things, they're just paying for one thing. They'll really love that idea. And maybe today they're like, oh, I'm not doing any content generation, but I'm not doing, I don't have any images being made for me, but hey, someday I might need that. And the good news is the AI employee does that for today. They can take my calls or answer my chats or that kind of thing.
Yeah, Chase's preview sounded so crisp and so
Really
clean.
good.
I was
Yeah,
really impressed by it. I think that's
me too.
one of the most crisp like previews I've heard yet.
Yeah, I have a weird, funny background in that I started an answering service out of college, or no, sorry, I dropped out of college to start an answering service. That's what I meant. And so as cool as that was when I would like go on dates and try to press the ladies, it didn't work. But what it did do is it taught me the power of how simple you could do something that would profoundly help a business. So like I would just watch, a dentist office would come to us and it's funny, they would almost hate signing up, but they would sign up because some customer called, at like whatever, 6 o'clock and their tooth was hurting. They were pissed that the dentist wasn't there. So they would sort of feel compelled like they had to do it. But what would amazingly happen is we would blow their business up overnight. And it's because they couldn't see what was there that they were missing, right? All of these people calling in after they got off work to try to get a dentist to help them, right? And fundamentally, we were like $99 a month. You're talking 24/7, 365, 2 a.m. on a Christmas morning, we're picking up your calls, right? So it was very cheap insurance. So for every business, and then the contents of the calls were the really important thing. So, we would have people come in and be like, here's a 50-page document about all of our pricing and all this other stuff. And we'd say, nope, not doing it. What we would do is we would whatever you said, like my house is on fire, I got locked out of my whatever, I'm broken down on the side of the road, I need a new filling out my tooth. We'd say, oh, no problem. Let me get your information and we'll get someone to give you a call right back, who's an expert in that. And fundamentally, that right there it made a lot of money for a lot of businesses because fundamentally, as humans, we're animals just like every other creature, and we think we're like, hard charging to get a solution, but we're really just trying to check a box in our head. And the second we think we've gotten something, or like we advanced farther down the road than we were, we'll call it a day. And so what we did is we really just kept people from calling that next competitor. And I feel like this is where inbound voice AI is going to crush it. So we're really boxing out that use case, and we're going to say, listen, yeah, AI bots can read that 50-page document all day long, but you do not want them trying to explain that over the phone. So we're really going to try to keep it very tight so we can really effectively do a great job. And again, because you can do busy no answer call forwarding, so this is the idea, like, you don't have to scare people. You don't have to say, oh, this AI bot's going to take over all your calls. It's like, no, listen, it's only when you don't pick up. So we're going to ring you, and if you don't answer, we're going to roll over. So, hey, if you're there, the AI bot never touches it. But the reality is, and we used to run into this too, people would say, oh, well, we only need you people for after hours. And we'd be like, oh, yeah, of course. And then boom, 10 a.m. in the morning, the calls just come flooding in. And what happens? People get busy, right? Front desk receptionist is out doing whatever. And the doctor is doing this, and the lawyer's doing that. Point is, they think they answer a lot of calls, but they don't. And so most of those calls will roll over right in the middle of the day. And you know what? They'll just make a lot more money from it. So I think it's going to be a very exciting development.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, if you haven't met Tom yet, Tom is one of the developers from the marketplace. He has his hand up too.
Hey, Tom. I know that background very well. Every private equity guy or venture capitalist I ever talked to has the same background.
You know what it was is the pandemic. I live in the Bay Area, but the pandemic hit and I finished my garage. And I have like a nice white wall behind
it's a thing though. I'm telling you, it's all the, it's like they used to run around with the Patagonia jackets on, and until Patagonia stopped selling them to them. But now they have the background too. Sometimes they'll logo it out too. They'll put like they put their name and stuff. It's always funny, but it's embarrassing when they both show up with the same one. I'm like, there's no way you guys are sitting in the same place.
Same view. Well, hey, awesome. That's actually, question was just like, how are you thinking about the marketplace moving forward? If any sort of thoughts you can share there, the future of it. I know it's something you guys have been working really hard on in the last year, seeing just so many improvements between that, API, V2, all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I learned a lot being a marketplace app myself. And I will say one of the most touchstone moments for me was, I can recall talking to my developer rep at Intuit, which right there should have told me something, but at the time I didn't think anything of it. But I said, I remember noticing that like Gusto payroll was like integrated with their market. And I was like, I'm confused. I don't get it. You guys have payroll and you're letting Gusto in the house. Like, what's the deal? Why not just use your size to block them out, right? And they said, why do we care? Like, why not have somebody come in if they're competitive? Because some people are going to like Gusto, some people are going to like us. Like, we don't care as long as we're QuickBooks customers, right? And fundamentally, I later learned, actually, this went all the way to the top. I got to meet the CEO at one point, and you could just tell that that's where that leadership came from. And so I thought, gosh, if I ever was in a position to run a marketplace, I want to run it like this, because it felt very respectful, right? And so that's how the track line we've taken. We want to continue to make that marketplace the best marketplace out there. I mean, I don't know anyone on planet Earth who's made a third-party payments integration marketplace like we have. I mean, you can actually come in and be a first-class payments option in our marketplace. And we intend to, at the end of this quarter, SaaS mode will go live with those as well. And I just checked in with that product manager. We're on track for that. So, we really intend for that marketplace to be anybody and everybody who wants to put the work and time and effort in. It doesn't matter if you're a big company or a one-man band or one-woman band, as it were. You're welcome to it. We want to find a way to help you win, because we don't feel like we've got the rights to all things. In general, my hope and my real dream on the marketplace is that somebody realizes that instead of trying to build ahead of us or somewhat slightly augment what we're doing, they should really see us as a platform and say, wait a second, what if I took all this and added on that stuff that just the dentist needs, like the toothpicker thing and all of that, and go hard after Dentrix and Eaglesoft and all of those guys, or pick some other vertical where you could really bootstrap on the fact that we have almost 400 engineers and climbing now, and we're going to stay in our lane and do everything marketing and CRM and all of that. But if you go hard in a niche, all of a sudden you can strap on all this other functionality. But whether people do that or not, that's okay. But we'll continue to invest heavily in the marketplace. V1 API directly to that question will probably remain for forever at this point, but we won't put any more effort into it. Some people we're adding. I think we are adding. If we haven't already, we're adding scopes and things. The issue is, I mean, I'm a software engineer, so I'm a bit biased in this. Some people don't seem smart enough to figure out how to handle OAuth, but so for those people, we'll keep V1 around. I don't get the big deal personally. I wrote many an API integration, and OAuth 2 is better and more secure and all of that for users, but I understand the simplicity of the API key concept. So we're going to add, I think, scopes to V1. The issue we ran into with the V1 API key base was just security issues. People would hand those stupid API keys out to random strangers who were doing some work for them, and then they would invariably obliterate their accounts or take advantage of them somehow. And then those people would come back to us and say, solve my problem. And we'd be like, don't give away the keys to your house to random people that you hire and expect that some of them aren't going to come back and rob you at some point. Like, just use your brain. But that doesn't always work, right? So so we try to take responsibility and lessen the impact. But I don't think we can force people into OAuth holistically. So we're just going to scope down the V1 stuff so that way at least there are some protections even for people using it.
Nice.
But I will not be adding any exciting new features to it.
I'm 100% on V2. I'm behind V2.
I figured. But I just, for anybody I just want to put it out there in history for anybody who ever wonders why we do what we do. It's an evolving thing. And what we do respect is, when we have a lot of engineers and we're engineering people, and sometimes the engineering method or way makes sort of theoretical sense, but in the real world doesn't always make real sense. So we do have a lot of respect for, perception versus reality. So we try to kind of find our way in the middle.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, we want to respect Shaun's time. Maybe I'll ask one last question to
Sure.
cap it off. What is your favorite thing that's coming down the pipeline, maybe for Summit, Q4, 2025?
Definitely the AI employee. Sorry, I can't. I just talk about stuff already that I love the most. I mean, I like it just because I think it speaks to the SaaSpreneur narrative. I think it's something we can get to the point where everybody can sell it as a lead on. Again, back to the whole, Alpine HVAC story. I want everyone to have those stories for themselves. And I think this can be incredibly scalable for people. And even if you know nothing about software or don't want to become a CRM expert and that kind of thing, but again, I think holistically, what I love is that we continue to democratize this stuff, because it really is all of your creativity that makes it work and makes it magical. I love that we have a part to play in your story, but I love that we're not the story, right? We do this together, and it's all of you out in the world finding the people and making the actual, taking the tools and actually making them do something. That to me is the more exciting thing to see. That's kind of how we think of ourselves. Like, we just make hammers and screwdrivers and nails, and all of you build the houses, right? And so it's beautiful. It's awesome to see like the creations you come up with and the solutions you generate. And I think it's a great reflection of how life really is. It's every business is different. Every person's looking for a different solution. And, we love and respect the fact that all of you are experts in your own right, in the way that you do things, and the people that you help and the knowledge that you gain. And we love the fact that we never try to step in and say, oh no, out of our way. We're so smart. We know all these things. And we feel like that's what other software companies really do. That's why they run the sales and marketing they do. That's why they roll the way they roll. It's why they don't let you white label things. It's why they're not interested in giving you any ownership or credit. And, we love that we found a different way to behave. And we love that we found a group of people who, love it as much as we do. And, we just, people, I get on lots of serious conversations. People always ask me what the future of HighLevel is, or my vision or whatever. And I just tell them I really love what I'm doing. I just love to do more of it. And I don't see any reason why that's not a great answer. No master plans. I mean, I don't see why, through what we're doing today, through the model we have, I just, for all things that matter to every small business worldwide, I don't know why we can't continue to do what we're doing. I mean, I'm super excited about the fact that we actually got our act together on translations. And at the end of this quarter, my co-founder Varun has staked his reputation on the fact that those are going to come out perfectly and beautifully. So instead of like the back button being like your back, it'll actually mean like the back button. So people who are trying to sell these things in other places with other languages aren't embarrassed to do so. I'm ecstatic about that. because I think there's a whole big world out there. And I think we can do the same thing in other countries that we are doing in the US and Canada and any other English speaking countries we're in. I think all of those things are just as exciting as the AI employee, but it's the model that matters. And I think it's an exciting model. I see a lot of people like the people on this call who have been successful. And I mean, I could hope for no more. I love the fact that we're able to help all of you build a business and build something that's recurring and build something that's, in it for the long haul. And, for the people that I know, and we're going to do a better job of this, but talking about the stories of all the people who have sold their businesses off the back of HighLevel and watching them get the valuations they deserved and what they should have gotten, and they get no penalties for building on the platform. Those stories are also incredible. And I expect to see and hear many more of them. And there's some of the numbers are starting to get quite large, which is also very cool to see. When I tips over $10 million, my ears perk up, and I'm excited to hear these entrepreneurs and their stories. And again, I love that we just got to play a part in that story.
Yeah, see. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Shaun.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, thanks everybody. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.